Nadine. I am so excited to talk to you today about your new book. For those of you who don't know, I'm Shelby. I'm with Little Justice Leaders. We bring social justice resources to parents and teachers who want to talk to little kids about issues of justice. And today we're talking with Nadine about her brand new book that is just coming out this week. So I'm super excited. We love the book. We're thrilled that families and teachers are going to be able to get their hands on it this week. So Nadine, can you start by introducing yourself so our listeners can hear a little bit about you and the amazing work that you do?
Oh, I appreciate it. Yes, thank you so much for having me. I'm Nadine Fonseca, and I'm the author of the soon-to-be released Only A Trenza Away. And I also am the founder of Mighty Kind, which is an anti-bias, anti-racist education company for children and all of the adults who strive to mentor them through their ABAR journeys. I'm originally from the San Francisco Bay Area. I'm a mom of 4 and currently in Austin, Texas, where we are slowly but surely melting every day.
I am melting here a little bit as well, up in Ohio. So yeah, if we want to start out, can you just tell me a little bit about Only A Trenza Away?
Yeah. So it follows a little girl named Ziumara. She's in a kind of mixed race family, a biracial household. Her father braids her hair every night as kind of a cultural tradition and also just like a bedtime routine. And as he braids her hair, they kind of co-create these imaginative adventures together where they get to explore new places and face new challenges. And each time she does, she feels more empowered. She feels brave or courageous or ambitious, all these different really cool feelings alongside of her papa. At one point, he's not able to be home for a night to kind of partake in their routine, and she tries to do it herself and her mom's not able to help her, and she kind of falls apart, thinking, well, if I can't even do this little thing of braiding my own hair, then how will I ever face big, real, actual challenges like a new school or, things like that. And so when he does return, he explains to her that I was only a trenza away, and that within these 3 sections of a braid, there's representation around the people who love you, the people who need your love, and your love for yourself. And that's something that you get to carry with you throughout life, whether he's physically present or not. So the hope is that it's, a little bit of just a sense of like empowerment, a sense of connection and love, some kind of cultural sprinkling in there, some Spanglish for the fun of it. But really just, a story of like kids learning to trust their own gut, and parents kind of modeling that alongside their kids.
I love it. And I know that kids are going to love it. I'm curious, what inspired you to write this book?
When I was a little girl, my dad braided my hair. He had learned from his parents. So, that's in the story, is he actually learned from his sisters when he was younger. He grew up on a farm. It was far more utilitarian. It was always a cultural tradition, but also it protected their hair when they were working outdoors or on the farm or things like that. And so I wanted to embed some of that cultural tradition, some of that utilitarianism, and then also show that these can evolve and morph over time into just new meanings or new purposes. And so that's kind of where it stemmed from, was my childhood of my dad braiding my hair when I was a little girl. Although it wasn't always fun or whimsical, and I had a lot of knots and tangles, and it wasn't always my favorite time. So this is a little nod to like some escapism, right, as therapy of like, let's picture ourselves in a happier place when maybe we're enduring something that isn't the most fun.
Oh, I love it. I love that story. I was actually going to ask if this book was tied to anything personal for you. So I love that was actually your experience, as a child having your hair braided. And now you're able to share that story and put a maybe more fun spin on it for kids.
Yeah.
And I imagine a lot of kids will relate to this, right? Of having their parents do their hair. And so, yeah, I think it's gonna hopefully inspire maybe some more fun moments during that time as well for a lot of families.
Hopefully.
Yeah. So you talked a little bit about the themes that you hope kids will take away from this book. Do you have any, themes or messages that you're hoping adults might take from the story?
It was interesting. It wasn't until I started doing some interviews about the book after the fact, and after it was, all written and illustrated and at the printers, that I realized that while it was definitely this kind of call to children to learn to trust themselves, right? Trust their whole beings, their guts, their brains, all of that, and feeling empowered and emboldened. The flip side of it, is I'm a parent, right? And I was writing from Papa's perspective just as much as I was from Xiomara's. And it's a little bit of a love letter of letting go, like learning to watch your own child kind of like sprout their wings, and like the best thing that you could ever do as a parent is raise this like, just, I don't know, this whole-minded, mindful, independent human being that like goes off into their own existence. And it's really bittersweet. And the moment I realized that in the interview, and I was like, oh, but actually I like fell apart into tears, right? I was like, oh my gosh, I have to like go with my children someday. But that was definitely for me, like the takeaway that I hope that parents and caregivers and even educators is like, the hope is that we give them enough tools and support and love and encouragement that they choose to spread their own wings and fly, and all we can do is model that the best we can, call ourselves in when we make mistakes that they can learn right alongside us. But also just, gosh, we got to trust them. We got to trust them to know, that eventually they'll know best for themselves. That's hard.
It's so hard, but it's so important. And I think it's a really, really good message for parents and caregivers. And like you said, yeah, even educators who, you have to let them, let them do their thing at some point and let them grow. So I love that. You mentioned there's kind of a sprinkling of culture in there. So you've talked a bit about the color palette in the book, the images. Can you tell us about it and why that was important to you to include that sprinkling of culture, what it means to you, where you can find that in the book?
So the color palette was something that I knew from the beginning that I wanted to pursue, this like really rich, vibrant, like jewel tone kind of color palette. And part of that is just, that's my favorite, like it's just, those are my colors. And for my first book, I really wanted to have that kind of personal, nod. But then also I wanted it to feel bright and bold. Like I want kids to feel bright and bold. And if that seeps through the ink on the page, then all the better. And so just something that just kind of swallows you up in the pictures. And Camila was such an incredible illustrator and created works that were barely visions in my mind that sometimes I hadn't even articulated, and it somehow came up in her art and was so validating, and it was such an honor to work with her in that way, right? But so a lot of that has kind of roots in like Latin American like tapestries and just the colors that you find, just that rich jewel tone colors throughout kind of Central American culture. But there's also a lot of like Spanglish throughout the book, not a lot, but some, because I just wanted to normalize that like not every family speaks only one language or only one language at a time. And for me, I mourn a little bit the fact that I was bilingual as a child, and assimilation didn't quite allow for me to carry that forward. And now I have no excuse. I'm an adult and I should just make time to like get better at my Spanish. But there is a piece of me that feels, sad that that's not part of my identity. And so I still speak Spanglish to my kids, and even those little pieces are important to me. So I wanted to kind of just normalize that piece in this as a culture.
Well, I love that. I think a lot of families in the US and probably around the world face the same thing, right? Where they, they're not just speaking one language at a time necessarily. And even if they're not speaking a language fluently, it's embedded in their day-to-day life. So I love that representation. And of course, the book is beautiful. I love the illustrations. And I know that the kids are going to love it too. The bright colors, it's just, it's awesome. So this was your first children's book, which is so impressive because it's incredible. What's this process been for you as a new children's book writer?
It's a challenge, and I feel very fortunate. I did not necessarily go through the entire kind of like manuscript submission rejection process that I know tons of incredibly talented writers and author hopefuls go through. And so that wasn't necessarily my journey. I actually did consulting work for DEI and ABAR work with the publisher and its parent company for years before they said like, hey, do you want this opportunity to write? And of course, my gut instinct was only if you're a really good editor, because I'm not a writer. Like that's not, I can tell stories, but I'm not an author. That's not what I aspired to be. That's not my skill set per se. But they had a great editor. And I think we all have stories to tell. And so I think if you have the right support and the right facilitation, I mean, we all have something within our souls that can contribute to like this body of work that is, it's just storytelling, right? Like learning from one another. So it has been very interesting coming from Mighty Kind, right? So originally we were publishing a 64-page magazine with all original content, illustration, original art, all of that every 10 weeks, which was a marathon and a sprint somehow at the same time. And it was exhausting. But we did that for 3 years. And so it was very different for one book of like 32 pages to take over a year. And I was like, well, what else? But I realized that they also are probably working on a dozen other books at the same time. So it was a little different coming from that angle of I'm used to having my hands in all of the things and pushing things along and making the mark. And it made me slow down a lot. And also kind of appreciate the process a little bit more in some ways, a little less in other ways. But that was definitely a bigger challenge for me was not being in charge of all of the ins and outs of getting something to publication and more just trusting that my publishing team knew what they were doing and had my best interests at heart and advocating for myself when I felt like I really needed to. And they've always been very receptive. So it was quite the learning process.
Well, it sounds like it, but it also seems like it definitely worked out because like I said, the book's awesome. Love it. I'm so happy that it's coming out into the world this week. So you all have to get your hands on a copy of this. If you haven't already pre-ordered, we will put the link below. Look at that, it's so beautiful. We will put the link below so that you can go ahead and order the book. By the time you're seeing this, it's probably already out, so you'll be able to order it right away. Nadine, thank you so much for sharing your story with us and for sharing your story with the world through this book. We love it. We will want to get this out to all the parents and families who care about justice, care about culture, or just care about good stories and great books for kids. So thank you for taking the time to talk with me today.
Thank you, Shelby. I appreciate it. Thank you for all you do at Little Justice Leaders. It's best.